Wyoming Territory, 1879. The first snow of October had not yet fallen, but the wind coming down off the mountains carried winter in its teeth. As Isaiah O'Connor rode back into the town he once swore he would never see again. He had dust on his boots, blood dried near the collar of his shirt, and 6 years of regret grinding behind his ribs. His dapple-gray gelding limped slightly, favoring its front left leg, but Isaiah did not stop. Not until that faded wooden sign came into view: Coldwater. Population, barely hanging on. He pulled the reins just outside the general store, where a group of townsfolk had already taken notice of him. They always did. Tall man, worn hat pulled low, eyes sharp like he'd seen too much because he had. But Isaiah was not looking for them. He was looking for her. "Zadie Bell," he said under his breath. "Please still be here." Inside the store, the warmth from the stove clung to the walls. Isaiah scanned the shelves, but it was not canned peaches or beans he came for. A boy no older than 7 stepped out from the back, dragging a burlap sack. "You need something?" the boy asked, curious but cautious. Isaiah crouched, studying the boy's wide-set eyes and strong jaw. "What is your name, kid?" "Jace," the boy answered, squinting. "You a lawman?" "No," Isaiah said gently. "I am looking for your mama." "Why?" Jace asked, stepping back a little. Before Isaiah could answer, the door from the back room opened, and there she was, Zadie Bell. Her dark hair tied back in a loose braid, skirts worn but clean, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She froze when she saw him, and for a second, Isaiah forgot how to speak. Zadie looked thinner than he remembered, but stronger too. Her face wasn't the same soft one from their childhood summers by the river. It was sharper now, like the world had carved her out of something tougher. She stepped forward, putting a hand on Jace's shoulder. "Go help your sister with the firewood," she said. The boy hesitated, then ran out the back. "What are you doing here, Isaiah?" Zadie asked, her voice low and steady. He took off his hat. "I came back for you." Zadie laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You left years ago. Rode off and never looked back." "I looked back every damn day," Isaiah said, voice rough. "I heard what they said about you here, that you were a shame to this town, that you had 2 children and no husband, that no decent man would—" "Finish that sentence," Zadie warned, her eyes flashing. Isaiah stepped closer. "I did not come here to judge you, Zadie. I came back because of you." She crossed her arms. "Why now?" "I was in Montana working cattle, then Colorado. I tried to forget. But I heard a man in Cheyenne talking about Coldwater, about the Bell girl running the general store alone with 2 kids. They said you were a scandal. I said you were the reason I ever knew what love was." Zadie's lips parted, but no words came out. "I came back," Isaiah said, voice thick, "because you were the only home I ever had." A long silence stretched between them. "You do not know what it has been like," she whispered, eyes glistening. "After my pa died, the town turned on me, said I was no better than my mother, said I was just like her, running wild, having children with no name. I tried to be good." "You are good," Isaiah said. "Better than anyone in this town." Just then, the door creaked and a little girl peeked in. She was maybe 5, dark curls escaping her bonnet. Her eyes lit up when she saw Zadie. "Gemma," Zadie said softly, kneeling. "Go back outside with your brother." The girl nodded, but not before giving Isaiah a curious glance. Isaiah waited until the door closed again. "They yours?" Zadie nodded once. "Jace and Gemma. Their father left the day after she was born. Said he wanted something different. Said I was too much weight." Isaiah clenched his jaw. "He is a fool." Zadie's voice dropped. "I was a fool too, but I will not let my children believe they were a mistake. I run this store. I raised them. I do not ask for pity. I am not here for pity, Isaiah said. I am here for you. She shook her head. You do not get to ride in after 6 years and say that like it fixes anything. I know it does not, Isaiah said. But I can help now. Let me fix what I can. Zadie stared at him, torn between anger and something else. Hope, maybe, or fear of it. I do not need saving, she said. I am not here to save you, Isaiah said. I just want to stand beside you. For a second, something in her cracked. But she turned away before he could see it fully. You still ride that old gelding? She asked, changing the subject. He has more sense than I do, Isaiah said. She almost smiled. Isaiah stepped closer, voice soft. You were never a shame to this town, Zadie. They were just too small to see your worth. Zadie looked at him then, really looked. Her eyes searched his face for a long time. I do not know if I can trust you, she said. Then let me earn it, Isaiah said. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. But inside, something had finally started to settle. Like maybe, just maybe, the worst had passed. And maybe love, real, steady love, had come home. The bell above the door jingled as the last customer stepped out into the dusk, leaving behind the scent of tobacco and damp wool. Zadie eased the latch into place and turned the key, her fingers stiff from the chill settling into the floorboards. Behind her, Isaiah set a crate of dried apples on the counter without being asked. You planning to stay through supper? She asked, not looking at him. I wasn't invited, he said, brushing dust from his sleeves. No, she said, pulling a ledger from under the counter. But you didn't leave either. Isaiah's voice was quieter now. I didn't want to. Zadie didn't answer right away. She dipped her pen into the inkwell and began tallying the day's sales, the nib scratching softly against the page. Outside, the wind hissed through the porch slats. It would be a hard frost by morning. He watched her work in silence, then finally asked, When did you take over the store? 6 winters ago, she said, after Mr. Langley passed. He left it to the bank and the bank didn't want it. I bought it with what I had left from Pa's tools and a team of mules. You built all this yourself. No one else was going to, she said, setting the pen down. I needed a way to feed the children. No man in this town would hire me once they saw I was alone. Isaiah leaned against the counter. You ever think about leaving? Every time someone walks through that door and won't look me in the eye, she said. But the land behind this store is mine. The house behind it is mine. The only thing I hate more than this town is what it would mean if I let them run me off. I'm not asking you to run, he said, but I could ride out with you. You'd never have to look back. She looked up sharply. You think I haven't had that offer before? Men passing through, offering escape like it's a gift I didn't already earn? I have 2 children asleep upstairs, Isaiah. They are not a burden, but they are a fact. You don't get to pretend this is simple. He stepped around the counter, slowly. I don't pretend about you. Zadie didn't back away, but her shoulders pulled tighter. Her voice lost some of its edge. I thought about you when I nailed up the shelves in here. I remember how you used to fix gates with your father. You always said Wood had a memory. Isaiah's voice softened. It does. I tried to forget you, she said, but I couldn't, even when I wanted to. He reached for her hand, calloused fingers brushing hers. I never stopped being yours. Zadie stared at their hands, then pulled away gently. Jace'll be hungry. He splits the wood but forgets to eat. I'll help, Isaiah said. She hesitated. You ever cook over a stove that doesn't draw right unless you wedge a spoon in the flue? I've cooked on worse, he said. And I'm good with spoons. She almost smiled but didn't let it reach her eyes. Then come on. They crossed the narrow yard behind the store, where the house sat low beneath a crooked pine. Smoke curled from its chimney, thin and gray. Inside, the children sat on the floor near the hearth, sorting chestnuts and whispering over a worn illustrated Bible. Zadie stirred the embers, then added kindling. Jace, bring the kindling bin in. Gemma, fetch the salt tin. The boy jumped up, eager. The girl moved slower, curling her fingers around Isaiah's pant leg before letting go. He crouched beside her, careful not to crowd. "You got a doll?" he asked. She nodded solemnly. "Her name's Maribel. She's missing an eye." "Well, that happens sometimes," he said. "I knew a man once who lost an eye in a card game. Didn't stop him none." Zadie glanced over from the stove. "Isaiah, can you peel apples?" "I can try." "Then sit," she said, handing him a paring knife and a basket. As he worked, the room grew warmer. Zadie stirred the pot, added potatoes, and set a loaf of bread by the fire. The children's chatter filled the gaps where silence once lived. The scent of thyme and onion rose in the air. After supper, Jace leaned against his mother's side, drifting toward sleep. Gemma curled up on a blanket with her doll and a tin cup of warm milk. Zadie folded a dishcloth and hung it by the stove, her movements slower now, more tired than wary. "Tomorrow's Sunday," she said. "I remember," Isaiah said. "The children go to church. I'd like to go with them." She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for a candle and lit it, the flame flickering against her face. "You can sleep in the storeroom. There's a cot behind the sacks of flour. If you're staying." "I'm staying," he said. She nodded once. "Then blow out the lamps when you're done." He watched her gather Gemma in her arms and disappear down the hall. Jace followed, yawning, feet dragging. Isaiah sat alone in the firelight, the peelings piled beside him. The house creaked softly, wind pressing at the windows. He didn't move for a long time. He was home. Not because the walls were familiar, but because the woman who'd built them still stood inside. Isaiah rose before dawn, the storeroom still cold, the scent of flour and burlap heavy in the air. He folded the quilt Zadie had left him without a word the night before, careful not to wake the house. Outside, the frost clung to the grass in white threads. The pump behind the store creaked as he filled the basin and scrubbed the dust from his hands and face. By the time he stepped onto the porch, the first light stretched across the ridge, pale and hesitant. He found Zadie in the lean-to behind the house, tying up kindling with twine. Her braid was tucked beneath a shawl, and her boots were dusted with frost. "You always work before the sun's up?" he asked. She didn't glance at him. "If I wait for warmth, things don't get done." Isaiah took the bundle from her hands and reached for the next without asking. "You always keep extra stacked here?" "Some families can't afford to buy it. I leave it where they can come get it quiet." He lifted the bundle into the shed. "You ever run out?" "Sometimes. But I always put more out." Zadie straightened, brushing her palms. "You meant what you said last night? About staying?" "I don't say things I don't mean." She looked at him for a long moment, then turned toward the house. "Then put on your Sunday shirt. The children don't like being late." He borrowed a clean collar from a trunk of supplies in the storeroom and met them at the door. Jace held his Bible with both hands, the corners worn. Gemma clutched a small shawl too long for her arms. Zadie had pinned a brooch to her bodice, shaped like a pine cone. As they walked, the town stirred to life around them. Smoke curling from chimneys, shutters creaking open, a dog barking from a hay cart. The church sat at the edge of town, plain and whitewashed, with a bell that only rang when someone had the strength to climb up and pull it. Inside, the pews were half full. Heads turned. Isaiah felt the weight of it but kept his eyes forward. Zadie sat with the children on one side, and he took the space beside them, hands resting on his knees. After the final hymn, Pastor Wilkes stepped down from the pulpit and approached them at the door, his face careful. "Miss Bell," he said, nodding. "Children." "Pastor," Zadie replied without warmth. His gaze shifted to Isaiah. "You're new." "Name's Isaiah O'Connor," he said. "I'm staying on." The pastor studied him. "You've chosen a hard place. I didn't come for ease." He gave a short nod, then lifted his hat and walked off toward the livery. As they stepped outside, Jace tugged Zadie's sleeve. "Can we visit the creek?" She looked to Isaiah. "It's past the field. They like to find smooth stones." "I'll come," he said. They crossed the back pasture where the grass had browned, and the fences leaned with age. Beyond that, the creek ran low and cold, its banks lined with willow. Gemma knelt by the edge, dipping her hand in. Jace followed the bend, scanning for frogs. Zadie stood apart, arms crossed beneath her shawl. "You remember this place?" she asked. He nodded. "You used to throw stones at my boots when I fished. You always caught more than me. I still have that knife you gave me. The one your father traded off that peddler from Kansas." Her voice caught. "He gave that to you?" "He said I'd need it if I was going to follow you around." Zadie looked toward the children. "He would have liked you." Isaiah stepped beside her. "I wish I had come back sooner. But you didn't." "I know." She picked up a stone and turned it in her hand. "You really plan to stay?" "I already started helping," he said. "I fixed the back gate before you woke. That gate's been broken 3 years. Not anymore." Zadie's lips parted slightly. "You're not just passing through." "No," she looked at him then, long and quiet. "I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything yet. Just let me stay. Let me be here." The creek rustled between them, low and steady. Gemma laughed as Jace showed her a stone shaped like a heart. Zadie closed her fingers around the one in her hand. "All right," she said. Isaiah didn't smile. He didn't move. But his chest rose, slow and deep, as if breathing had just become easier. They walked back together, the children between them, the sun climbing above the ridge. And though no one watching would have noticed, something had shifted quiet as the wind through the willows, steady as the creek that had never stopped running. The next week settled into a rhythm without needing to be spoken aloud. Isaiah rose early, cleaned out the trough behind the store, and repaired the cracked panes in the storeroom window. Zadie let him, though she never asked. He found tasks to do without permission, and she didn't stop him. That was the closest thing to welcome he expected, and it was enough. One afternoon, as the light slanted gold across the clapboard siding, Zadie stood in the narrow garden behind the house, pulling the last of the onions. Isaiah leaned on the fence rail, watching her hands work the soil. "I passed the blacksmith's wife earlier," he said. "She asked if I was the one staying with the Bell woman." Zadie didn't lift her head. "And what did you tell her?" "That I stay where I'm needed." She pressed her thumb along the roots of an onion, brushing off dirt. "You say things easy, Isaiah, but they land heavy. I can't help how they land. Only how I mean them." Zadie tucked the onion into her basket. "I remember when you used to lie just to get out of chores. I never lied to you. You once told me you could outrun a horse. I said I could outrun your horse. And I did, for nearly 10 paces. She looked over, the corner of her mouth twitching. "He was lame. I was 12. Zadie rose, brushing her skirts. "There's a harvest social next week. I wasn't going to go." Isaiah stepped down from the rail. "You thinking different now?" "I don't dance anymore." "Then I'll stand beside you while others do." She narrowed her eyes. "You'd stand in a room of people who've spent years spitting my name like it's ash, just to say nothing?" "I've stood in worse places for less reason." Zadie shifted the basket to her hip. If we go, it won't be to prove anything. No, Isaiah said. It'll be because we want to. She nodded once. Then we'll go. That evening, Zadie stitched a hem by lanternlight while Gemma leaned against her side, drowsy. Jace sat cross-legged on the floor, carving a piece of hickory with a paring knife Isaiah had sharpened for him. You've got a steady hand, Isaiah said, watching the boy work. I want to make a slingshot, Jace said. For rabbits, not birds. Zadie looked up. You'll need to ask Mr. Owen for scraps of leather. He keeps a box behind the tannery. I'll go tomorrow, Jace said. Can I use the old yoke for the frame? If you do it right. Isaiah turned toward Zadie. You ever think of teaching others? You've made something here that most folks wouldn't believe unless they saw it. She set her stitching aside. Some days I think I could teach. Other days I just want quiet. You'd be good at it. Folks listen when you speak. I don't speak to be heard, she said. I speak to hold my ground. Maybe that's why it matters more. She held his gaze a moment longer than before, then turned back to her needlework. Later, as the house fell still, Isaiah stepped onto the porch and leaned against the post, watching the moon rise over the ridge. Zadie joined him, arms folded against the cold. I thought I hated quiet once, she said. And now I see it's the only thing that tells you the truth. He looked at her, the shadows soft on her face. What does the quiet say now? She didn't answer right away. Then, that I'm not alone. Not anymore. Isaiah didn't move, didn't speak. But he reached out, slow and sure, and let his hand rest lightly over hers. Zadie didn't pull away. The wind stirred the trees beyond the field, and the stars came out one by one. Inside, the children slept. The house stood steady, the porch strong beneath their feet. And though the town still whispered, its voice had grown smaller than the sound of two hands joined in the dark. The autumn wind carried the scent of wheat chaff and distant smoke as the day of the harvest social arrived. Isaiah stood in front of the mirror nailed to the storeroom wall, adjusting the collar of the cleanest shirt he owned. It still bore the faint scent of lye soap, and the cuffs had been stitched by Zadie's hand late the night before, without comment. He hadn't asked her to, and she hadn't mentioned it. That was her way. From the kitchen window, he caught a glimpse of her helping Gemma button the back of her wool dress. The girl twirled once, then pressed her palms to her cheeks, half hiding a smile. Zadie smoothed her daughter's hair and stepped back. There was something in her face, then a softness, lit from within that Isaiah hadn't seen in her before. Not even when they were young. Jace stood near the door, straight-backed in a coat Isaiah had helped patch. He held his shoulders stiff like he wanted to look older than he was. Isaiah rapped lightly on the frame as he stepped in. You ready? He asked. The boy nodded. Mama made me promise not to run. Well, Isaiah said, tugging his gloves on, you can walk fast. The church hall had been swept clean and strung with garlands of dried corn husks and red leaves. Lamps had been hung from the rafters, their glow spilling down in warm pools. The benches had been pushed aside for the dancing, though the first hour was always reserved for cider and stew and polite greetings from people who preferred silence the rest of the year. Zadie stepped into the space like she belonged in it, even though Isaiah saw the way some heads tilted, the way a few mouths pressed thin. But she didn't flinch, and Isaiah stayed close enough that no one forgot she wasn't alone. Mrs. Langley, who hadn't spoken to Zadie in 2 years, offered her a bowl of squash soup. Zadie accepted it without a word, and the older woman moved on, as if that was all she'd wanted for Zadie to take something from her hand. Isaiah found them a bench near the stove. You warm enough? He asked. Zadie looked around the room. I'm not cold. Gemma and Jace drifted toward the other children, drawn by whispers and the promise of molasses cookies. Zadie's eyes followed them until they disappeared into the knot of laughter near the corner. "My pa used to call these gatherings false harvests," she said. "Said the real work happened in the dirt, not under lanterns." "Maybe," Isaiah said. "But sometimes people need a reason to stop digging." A fiddle struck up, lilting and uneven, and couples began to pair off on the floor. Isaiah turned toward her. "You said you don't dance," he said. "I don't," she replied. "Then walk with me." They stepped outside into the cool dark, the music slipping through the cracks in the hall's walls. Zadie pulled her shawl tighter, and Isaiah offered her his arm. She took it without hesitation. They walked toward the edge of the field, where the stubble left from harvest caught the moonlight. Zadie stopped at the fence line and leaned against the post, her breath fogging faintly. "I've been afraid for a long time," she said. "Afraid that if I let someone close, I'd lose what I've built." "You haven't lost anything," Isaiah said. "You've only added to it." She looked at him. "You mean to stay through winter?" "I mean to stay through whatever comes. You said that once before you left." "I was a boy then," he said. "I didn't know how to stay." Zadie turned toward him fully. "And now, I know that staying isn't just about standing still. It's about choosing the same people every day. I choose you." She took a breath, but no words came. Instead, she stepped closer, her hands cold against his chest. Isaiah touched her face, just once, with the back of his fingers. "You've carried so much," he said. "And I'm still standing." "I know," he said, "and I want to stand with you, if you'll let me." Zadie closed her eyes, then opened them again, steady and clear. "I want that," she said. He kissed her then, gently, without haste. The autumn wind moved through the dry grass behind them, and the music inside the hall rose faintly in the distance. When they parted, she didn't step back. They returned to the hall hand in hand. Gemma saw them first and ran up to wrap around Zadie's legs. Jace followed with a grin that broke whatever remained of Isaiah's reserve. By the end of the evening, the children had fallen asleep with their heads on the table, and Zadie leaned against Isaiah's side like it was the most natural thing in the world. They walked home under a sky thick with stars. The air smelled of wood smoke and old leaves, and the house was just as they'd left it, warm, quiet, waiting. The next morning, Isaiah hitched the cart and drove into town with Jace to pick up a shipment of salt and lamp oil. Zadie stayed behind with Gemma, who helped her rearrange the store shelves to make room for the new goods. In the weeks that followed, Isaiah built a new roof for the chicken coop and laid stones for a proper walk between house and store. Zadie wrote to the schoolmaster in Laramie about taking on a part-time teaching post come spring. The children began calling him Mr. Isaiah, and after a while, just Pa by the time the first snow fell. Zadie had given him a key to the back door and a quilt she'd made the winter her father died. He didn't say anything when she handed it to him, just unfolded it and laid it across the bed in the storeroom he no longer slept in. One clear morning in February, Isaiah knelt in the thawing garden and pressed a ring into Zadie's palm. No speech, no crowd, just a promise. She didn't cry. She nodded once and said yes. By the next harvest, the store bore a new sign, hand-painted and hung beneath the old one, Bell and O'Connor Mercantile. The children had outgrown their coats, and the garden yielded more than they could carry in one trip. They made a life, slow and steady, built from days that didn't need to be explained. A life rooted in the same soil where they'd once thrown stones and promises, where things had broken and healed again. And in that life, Zadie was never alone again. Nor was Isaiah. They had chosen each other not in the easy season, but in the one that asked everything and gave more back. And that made all the difference.